this thing starts with an organization that owns an ABCD kind of framework for improving or strengthening communities. So I'm actually on the board of West Core Neighbors, and we support Amy as our connector. And we make sure that she gets paid, and we make sure that she gets the training she needs and the support that she needs to function best as a neighborhood connector.
I'd like to see too is when you have these neighborhood connectors, everybody that's involved in that, they live right there. You have a lot of these churches that are well attended, but not everybody that attends that church in that neighborhood lives in that neighborhood. But neighborhood connector and the group that Amy has, or Heights of Hope, or the other groups, everybody that's invested, they live there. They've got buy-in, they've got the community, and the connection is right there where they live.
Every year, West Core hosts a listening event, and it's an event where neighbors can come together and brainstorm their ideas, the visions that they have for this neighborhood. And after that meeting, I sit with our employee, one of our Nuestra Casa coordinator, and we just think through, how can we put a committee around this? How can we make this come alive? This is what our neighborhood cares about and values. So some of the things that came from there were so amazing. And I'll just touch on two of the main ones that came up this year. One being able to showcase neighborhood talent, such as art or music. And so having events that could bring people out to listen to a neighborhood band or put their artwork on display. And so that was a really cool idea that came out. And then another one was an alleyway cleanup and alleyway beautification. And not just to clean up the alley and make it look nice, but more so to have another venue for places to hold events. And so that would be a very cool project that we're looking to advance on, trying to put the foundational work on, getting people on the committee who are really invested in that project and would love to see it come to fruition. And one thing that came to fruition years ago, actually, was neighbors coming across a space that became available to them. It was actually a building that was abandoned. And this space they were dreaming up ideas of what they could do for it. And it developed into a neighborhood community building. And so through the efforts of the neighbors, they were able to gut this space out. They raised money to remodel it. They added a studio apartment on the second floor. And now it functions to this day as a community center that is a space for neighbors to be able to rent for birthday parties or I actually just spoke to somebody yesterday about having an art show. And so it's also available for book clubs or gardening mentorships, classes like cooking or yoga. And so, and out of that, we also host an event once a month for the neighbors to be able to get involved and get to know their neighbors, maybe meet new neighbors. And so that building is called Nuestra Casa, and that, it's just been such a beautiful center of our community there.
Something you said, Amy, just made me think about a couple different things that we've been able to do working with the neighborhood connectors. I remember years ago being in an apartment of some people that were really in need, and they had two small kids that didn't have beds. And through the interaction, and once I got through with the reason that I was there, I was able to make sure that I put them in contact with a neighborhood connector in that neighborhood. And through that connection, through that relationship, the neighborhood connector was able to come around to that family and give them the support they need, not only some emotional support to get through that time, that season in their life, but also the physical support. And they were able to get them beds and get them in contact because they were new to our area, and get them in contact with the other resources that we have available locally. So that really, really helped them. The other thing I wanted to share is because of the relationship that my team has got with their neighborhood communities, we've been able to use them as information sharing. And if you think of it kind of like a phone tree, I mean, I've been woke up at 2 a.m. To a phone call from a neighborhood connector saying, hey, Weather Wax, or most people call me Wax. Hey, Wax, I see a lot of police cars down the street. Is this anything that I need to put the word out to shelter in place? Can you find out what's going on? And so after a few phone calls, I'm able to call them back and say, nope, it's an isolated incident. It's just at that address. Your neighborhood is safe. Your community is safe. But in the retrospect, I've been able to do something like that. I've been able to call the neighborhood connector and say, hey, there's something going on down the street or in this neighborhood. Could you put the word out that it's isolated? There's no fear. You guys are safe to still be out of your houses, or shelter in place for the meantime. But it's just been a great resource for information sharing and to help direct people to get resources that are available. And this is where I get really excited and passionate, because when I started 18 years ago, as a brand new officer, just getting my feet wet as in law enforcement, there were some of the aspects of the job that was intimidating, as anybody could imagine. And there was the one neighborhood that was really, really, I guess I want to say intimidating to me, was the Holland Heights area that now there's a neighborhood connector. So I think about that neighborhood then, I could think of a couple different Hollywood movies that I could compare it to, whether it's a high violent area, high gang, high drugs, whatever, high crime area. That was 18 years ago. And around that same time, and Jay, you might be able to have a date when Holland or the Heights of Hope was established. It was around the 2002, correct?
In Holland Heights, it would have been a little bit later than that, probably okay. 2005, 2006.
Okay, so a little bit later than I remembered, but anyway, to look at that community and where I got established in there as a community police officer about 4 or 5 years on the force, I had an idea in my mind about what that community was, and that was high crime area, high call volume for us, and at that time as a new officer, it was. But once a neighborhood connector got established and they started the groundwork in building their team, to see where they've come over the last 15 to 18 years is absolutely remarkable. I was talking to somebody recently because they've got a Facebook page and they share information, and they're building a cookbook now as a community. They're making sure they're, as a community, they're getting out and shoveling the fire hydrants. Most recently, they had a cardboard sled race, because right across one of the streets here in Holland is at Admiralty Park, where there's a nice sledding hill. But they, as a community in the Holland Heights neighborhood that they focused on, they put together this sled race, and then that made other people want to join. So us as a law enforcement agency and on my community policing team, they did this, they spearheaded it, they put it together, and they got us to join. We weren't asked to join to be a part of it, but we wanted to be there because I've been able to see the transition of this community to go from a high crime area to a very low crime area, to an area of primarily rental properties that people used as transition in housing that they needed to live for a short period of time and then hopefully move out and have the desire to leave, to now people are living there and they have the desire to stay because of the relationships that's been built through this organization, through GLU's resources and efforts, and everything that's been established there has been amazing. So they've not only established this community and created the bonds and relationships and family atmosphere that they have now, but it's also creating a desirable place for people to live and raise kids and be a member of a neighborhood. When
Heights of Hope had their first connector go through ABCD, she set up a basketball hoop in the one of the cul-de-sacs. And on Monday nights, the guys would come out and play. On Tuesday nights, the ladies said, we want our turn, and something like that anyway. And she used those gatherings to listen. What do neighbors care about? Eventually, they set up a little block connector network so that Stratford, Oxford, Abbey, I forget the fourth one, but they created the SOAR team, which meant there was one person from every block that was kind of the ears of each block. Wasn't long, and the SOAR members said, we need our own community center. So they rented an apartment in the neighborhood, and it was shut down because it wasn't zoned for anything except residential. So they as residents went to City Hall and sought a zoning variance and got it, and they had their first community center. It wasn't long after that, they said, what can we do to help our kids? And so they created a suite of youth programs. In fact, if you go to the Heights of Hope website, you can find for yourselves there quite a suite of youth-centered activities that run ongoing to this day. And then they said, we're one of the highest public busing neighborhoods in the city, and we don't have a shelter. We want our own shelter. So they went to the city, and the city said, we don't have money for a shelter. They went to Parks and Rec. We don't have money they went to the police. We don't have money for a shelter. Everybody said we don't have money. So finally they said, well, I guess we'll do it ourselves. And they started raising funds. And they got a certain way into their own fundraising. And then some donors came alongside and said, we're going to help you. And they now have their own bus shelter. And not once in the last 8 years has it been tagged. And they clean it up themselves, and they take care of it. And then they said, more recently, they said, we want to buy one of these fourplexes ourselves. We'll use the upstairs rental from 2, and we'll turn the whole downstairs into a new community center. And that's what they did. So they're now owners. There's one young mom in the neighborhood who said, when I moved here, my only dream was to get out of this neighborhood, leave this neighborhood. Today, she's there on purpose. You couldn't move her out because she said, this neighborhood helped my kids succeed. Their generation was the first generation that actually graduated high school, almost 100%. And many of them went on to college. And she said, this neighborhood raised my kids. She said, I may be poor going forward. I may not get out of poverty per se, but you broke generational poverty by helping my kids succeed. And I think that's just so powerful. So I'm going to just make this personally. Why do I find it so helpful and important? I don't think we've ever, as a nation, been in an environment where isolation is as high as it is today. That is, if you take out a tic-tac-toe board, 9 squares, and you put your residents at the center, and if you ask the typical North American, how many of your neighbors who live immediately around you and the other 8 squares around you, how many of their first and last names can you give? Often it's not even 1 or maybe 2. Today, this idea of a village raising a child used to be pretty central. It used to be the way we did society. Today, it's not. And so in the whole helping infrastructure, the whole social change framework, the one thing that is missing in almost all of our neighborhoods is this connectivity, this being connected to each other and believing that we have, by working together, all the capacities we need to achieve what we want, what we dream about together. It's within our grasp. We don't have to be afraid. We can work together to have a beautiful future together. That's what inspires me. For me, there are so many people who want to connect and who want to be a part of something so special and memorable. Mm-hmm. Especially during this COVID time, as Jay mentioned, where everyone is more isolated than ever. So investing into Great Lakes Urban can really help continue to perpetuate this growth and development in the neighborhood. I truly believe that we all need each other, whether that's emotionally or in other forms. Creating an avenue to build that bridge can only inspire others to get excited and join in and be a part of a dream for their neighborhood. So,
on a personal note, I grew up in a broken home in an impoverished neighborhood, and joining the military right out of high school, and kind of getting out of that, and now here in Holland and seeing this philosophy work. seeing it firsthand, coming from the neighborhood, from a high crime kind of a dark, dingy feeling neighborhood to what it is now. It's a bright spot in our community. I see this program working, and it's turning neighborhoods into communities, building relationships, not only within that a few block area, but it's bringing people in. Once it's established and that success is there, it becomes a magnet for other people and organizations to want to be around that. I mentioned the sledding hill and the sledding event that they had recently, and people wanted to be there. They wanted to be with them because they're a bright spot in our community now. So it's wonderful to see what these neighborhood connectors are doing and the success that they're having. And it's through the seed that's planted from GLU and getting started in these communities. So it's great to be a part of that. It's great to be a part of the city team now, myself, and I'm really, really excited about the future for GLU and the future for their work in the Holland area.